Welcome back to Quest for Peace. I'm Iyaz Akhtar. I'm actually in the Guys from Queens headquarters today. So like, if you're like, hey, your apartment looks a lot like GFQ, I didn't steal this entire look. I'm actually in Queens today, and we're shooting in April. We're going to shoot a whole bunch of this stuff. So you're going to get this out week by week, and we've got a ton of guests today. So if you're watching live, lucky for you, because we're going to be talking a lot. And if you're not watching live, well, you missed something. You should follow me on Twitter then. Let's see. I'm actually going to be switching this live, so if it sucks, you blame me. But the audio should be fine. There's my little Twitter. That's not my handle. You can see that was my guest, who's already snickering. Well, yeah, so if you want to find out when the show is live, go ahead and follow me on Twitter at Iyaz. And this show, if you've never heard of it, I don't know how you're watching it now, but this show is about trying to find inner peace. And I've been looking for that for years, okay? I am getting there ever since before I hit 30, which I turned 36 years ago. And I wanted to figure out, okay, who am I going to be? What am I going to be? I'm way too wound up. I'm way too uptight. I need to kind of chill out. So I've been trying to figure out different ways, and most of this show is about me failing, quite honestly. I really suck at finding inner peace. So I have people on this show every now and then to talk about what they've gone through and what it takes for them to find some inner peace. And today we've got a very special guest, somebody I know pretty well. Her name, I forget her name, though. I think it's like Elizabeth Romero. There she is right there. You can see her. Let me get rid of my lower third. That's 8 there. And then there we go. That's by yourself. Liz Romero, everybody.
Hello.
Now, if nobody knows who you are, they're like, okay, why is this person on this show? Who are you?
My name is Liz Romero. I met Iyaz when we both worked at Twit, and we ended up becoming best of buddies.
True story.
Yeah, true story. And then eventually, many, many years from then, we ended up taking our friendship to the next step.
Yeah, what we did is we decided to become an LLC. Clearly, that's what we did.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're
tax purposes.
Exactly.
Totally.
No, we've been a couple now for what, 2 years now?
Yeah, we just had our 2-year
Anniversary.
Mm-hmm.
That's right, on the 24th of March.
Yeah, we're good at this stuff.
Well, yeah. So 2 years now, we've been a thing, like an actual thing, a formal thing.
Like E.T. thing?
I don't know if ET has anything to do with this.
I was just thinking about the E.T. video game from Atari.
Yeah, we were watching some Atari documentaries the other day.
Yeah.
So anyway, now you've met me, but what else should people know about you? Now you're, as far as I know, a California girl, and you're in Queens right now.
Yeah, I'm not visiting. Like, this isn't vacation.
All right, so you tell me about growing up and then moving out here.
Okay, well, I am a kind of odd specimen where I'm a nerd, but I played all the sports and was the tomboy. So even though I have an older brother, everyone thought he was younger than me because he was like my role model. He loved Marvel and comics and video games and Nintendo, so I did too, because whatever he did had to be amazing. It's like, oh. But because I played sports and I was really good, I would always be the person playing all the sports, and people knew who I was, but I didn't really know my brother because he was very quiet and like sitting in the corner playing magic cards or Pong or something like that. So if people start, picking on him, I'd be the person getting in their face like, take somebody on your own size, even though they're older than me because they're...
But you're quite tall, though.
I was stretched as a child, I think, because I did have lined up scholarships. So parents, they got their goal. But yeah, I just always grew up being kind of a protector. And I think that's why I always go towards nerds. It's like I always want to you are my people, let me protect you.
You go towards nerds. Okay,
I'm going towards nerds.
But you live your whole life in California, and
Whole life.
there are 3 massive stresses people can go under. It would be moving, changing a job, and death. So these are the worst things a person can experience. And you moved out with me in, what was it, June of last year? Now, what was that like, that adjustment to go from Woodacre, and then we lived together in Petaluma, California, which is, if you don't know...
And I lived in Woodacre for 8
years?
27 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Woodacre, if you don't know anything about it, can you describe Woodacre to people? Because when you told me how to visit you, you go, it's the house where the bus stop used to be.
So I'm born and raised in an area where there's no cell phone reception. I live where cows live. It was, this sounds like something that would be in Winnie the Pooh, where it's like It's literally Wood Acre. That's where I'm born and raised. So there's a bunch of trees, one little general store. If you wanted to actually go anywhere, it's going to be at least a 15-minute drive. You had to drive everywhere. Very, 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 very small town. Very hippie-ish. I still have the calluses on my feet from being barefooted a lot. Yeah, but definitely, not those other habits. It was kind of like that hybrid of like, it's the richest county Marin and hippies. So it's like yippies. Like it's like all the hippies and they care about the environment, but they're driving the SUVs that are supposedly green. It's this weird combination of it, which doesn't make much sense. But I've just grown up in a small town where everything was slow and you had to drive everywhere. Pretty much basically the complete opposite of Manhattan.
Well, we haven't talked about Petaluma yet.
Holy yeah.
Petaluma is a little bit different. It's got this what's that feel? What'd you call it?
Small towny, old towny.
Yeah,
very old towny.
You basically, if you've ever seen like American Graffiti or something like that, that's where it actually was shot. Petaluma is this old town, and it's kind of small and slow, and
it's definitely small and slow, but it does have it's kind of on the up and rising. I think a lot of people have said. Dude, you can look at me like all you want, but remember there was that McDonald's commercial about Petaluma that we randomly saw.
There is a McDonald's commercial about Petaluma, but it's also very, very slow. It's a nice town, but we moved to Manhattan after living in Petaluma for a while. So, what was that change like for you, and what's that? What does that do for your mental well-being? Because if you're used to something for so long, and you're used to a world where it's quiet and it's slow and it's got what's the word? Dirt roads sometimes, actually in Woodacre.
Yeah.
And around to Woodacre.
Yeah.
Moving to the concrete jungle, what was that like, and what did that do to you mentally?
Well, it actually had a lot of effects that I didn't even know had taken place. Because when I went from 27 years or 28 years, because I'm turning 30 this year. Oh God. So 28 years in Woodacre, living on the property that I was born and raised on in a studio, to Petaluma, living in a house with you, and then went from that, which was, November to June, and then June we moved to Manhattan, New York.
Okay, what?
And I didn't even realize how much of a culture shock that was going to give me. I heard about it, but I didn't even realize my symptoms of being just kind of feeling like I was in a daze. I felt like I was just walking in a dream and nothing was really happening. I didn't even realize that how this was culture shock and homesickness. I didn't even know the effects. It really just threw me out of my element because for the first time, I didn't have a job. I wasn't the stable one where everyone could depend on me. I have my stuff together. It's no, I went from having all my stuff together, having a job, having, everything together, to disheveled, no job, in a strange place by myself with 2 dogs when I'm born and raised as a cat person.
Okay, I don't know if you're by yourself. I was at work, right?
You were at work, and then I'd be sitting in the apartment with no couch, on an air mattress.
Okay, well that's interesting. So the idea was we moved out to New York because my son lives out in New York.
Yes.
And then we were seeing if we were going to be a thing.
Yeah.
And so we lived together in Petaluma to see if that was going to work.
Yeah, we kind of I made it so it's okay, because I knew that you were going to be moving to New York before a lot of people, because we worked together. And if you're moving to New York, then obviously I would be. And I didn't know if that was going to work. I didn't want it to jeopardize my job because that was pretty much a potential career where I was at. So we kind of had to keep that under wraps.
Let's talk about you and secrets, by the way, real quick.
What do you mean? Why would you talk about secrets?
No, for mental. Okay, I'm not messing with you just because I know you really well. This is actually about this show. If you're listening to this, you're trying to figure out, okay, how do I find inner peace too, right?
Oh yeah.
And you were basically under a ton of stress because you knew a bunch of secrets about me that I was leaving that company. Yeah. You knew that I was going to move to New York. You knew a lot of this stuff before anybody else did, and you were really good friends with certain high-level people. What did that do to you internally?
It destroyed me.
And how did you handle it?
Well, since I was the assistant to the CFO and the owner, and the CFO pretty much was one of my closest friends. I've known her for over 10 years. That was just, it wasn't as stressful as moving here. I found out. I thought that was like the most stressful point in my life, but obviously there's been new heights have ascended. But it was just so hard. Kind of, it was kind of like I was like on a balance beam or like a seesaw where I was just in the middle of trying to make sure, it's like trying to make you happy and make sure that we're good. And then I'm trying to make my friend and my boss happy. So it's like my partner who we're figuring out if we're going to move together. And then I have my job and my boss. And it was a balance act. And it just like, after a while, it kind of felt like I was just there balancing act. And then my core and everything was giving out. It was just too much at one point where I just broke down and had to kind of tell each of you, it's like, you can't talk about this person and you can't talk about this person.
Well, to be fair, I think we were both talking a lot of crap about each other to you separately.
Yeah, I was a middle person and I had to kind of just like take it all in and then didn't have any release.
Yeah, so you kind of got stuck in the middle there, and then we set up boundaries. So this is actually very important for, this is, the idea of finding peace. It was, okay, please don't speak to me about this person. And I was like, not a problem.
Oh yeah, we had it so that there's like certain people you just, if you can't, it's kind of like if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all about certain people. And that kind of made it so that we were better. Because before it was like tension, because it's like, well, I need to vent about this. It's like, but I don't want, then that will get me on a tangent. It's like, and vice versa. So I think that's the best way we found it. You have to find those boundaries if you're working together. What are the boundaries that you have to establish so that you make it so that when you're off work, you are relaxing? Because that's the thing, when you're off work and at home, you're supposed to be decompressing, relaxing, instead of like riveting it all up and reliving and rehashing the day and be like, I didn't really go home or get off work and still doing it.
Well, I mean, there was a time where we were working together and then we'd come back home, and so we knew everything that happened in the person's day. Like, what happened today? I know what happened today. You got yelled at for something dumb. I got yelled at for something dumb, or whatever the heck it might be that day.
Yeah, or it's like, oh, and I saw you kind of take the brunt of that over there. Like, ooh, that didn't look good. It's like, yeah.
But then we had different jobs, different places. I moved over to CNET, and I was working in San Francisco.
Which was still really tough, because that was before people knew that, still, they didn't know that you were planning on moving to New York. All they knew is that you went to CNET. They had no idea. The reason why you took the job at CNET is because that means that you could transfer to New York where your kid is. Mm-hmm. So I still had to kind of play, like, oh yeah, he's loving the San Francisco office. He'll be there forever. No.
Well, I did love the San Francisco office.
I know you loved it, but it's not like you like moved there and set up shop to be there forever.
Well, we also had the issue of the fact we lived in Petaluma, and I was taking the bus to work. So
you hate commutes.
Well, it's an hour and a half commute. It's one of the reasons why I lived in Petaluma in the first place, because I was only a 10-minute commute if I was walking or taking a car. Now I was gone for about 3 hours. You barely saw me during that time. That was stressful too.
Mm-hmm. We went from seeing each other. That was a hard adjustment. That was insanely hard, because we went from it was kind of like, that whole, you kind of put me on withdrawal. I was having Iyaz withdrawals because you were kind of like my happiness drug, where it's like, I got to see you all the time. You're my best friend. So it's like, we're working together. I could be bouncing on my ball and like get your eyesight, be like, oh, hey. And like, we're IMing, like, I can see you, to all that. Then to, I barely saw you because you're up insanely early, getting on the bus. And then you come home and staying late and you're exhausted, and you were also working out at the time, which is one of your forms of like de-stressing out and helps you do your thing. So yeah, we've had a lot of things, or you know what? I've dealt with a lot of, boom, I'm going to go from a lot of Iyaz to no Iyaz. I'm going to go from a very slow, small town to boom, busy Manhattan, New York, concrete. So I've had a lot of like big adjustments.
Well, how did you adjust to that? Because I have my ideas of how you adjusted to it, because, I mean, we can be honest about this. It wasn't exactly a smooth transition.
No.
And none of these were smooth transitions. And the thing is, we had to work really hard to figure out what does it take to make it work, because we had a lot of external things saying, okay, look, you're in Manhattan. It's concrete. There's nothing I can do other than there's a park over there. I can show you some greenery.
Yeah, because we live next to Central Park, which is
we're
like...
lucky. So what did you do when you're trying to adjust? What did you see that didn't work, and what do you see that works now? Because that I think would be really helpful to anybody listening, and also just
Mm-hmm.
figuring out what did you do to find, because we're actually, I mean, I don't want to jinx it. We're in a really good place right now. You know, we're doing really well. Your job's going very very well. You got a career now.
Yeah.
I mean, you got a position where you have a career path, which is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing well. Things are going very well. So, could you tell everyone how the adjustment went, which poorly, and how how
Oh, I would have done it a little different.
how we've made it better?
Yeah. Well, the first thing is and this definitely comes from me having PTSD. And I have that because of my past relationships. And because
I mean, you don't have to explain any further, but yeah,
yeah, so just because of past relationships, I have PTSD. So I'm already on edge when it comes to being with a partner and you being in that role, and you were my only ally or my only support group, going from a lot of support and people in California to just you. And the problem then, the thing that I didn't do the best thing about was, and I wish I could turn back the time and redo, was I held a lot in. I didn't tell you about, like, I'm going through this, you know, I'm feeling this. I would only actually tell you these things when it finally, I got to the boiling point and it's spilling over, and, it's just like the kettle pot is like, instead of just when I start to hear the little whistle, I'd wait till the thing's boiling over to tell you.
mm-hmm.
So I wish I had, taken a deep breath, actually, as soon as I start to feel anxious or a little bit of anxiety, it's like, no, I moved from California to New York. I love you. You're my partner. You're my best friend. I can talk to you. I don't have to keep all these things bundled up, wondering if these feelings are justified or right. Is it all in my head? Because just things like that always happen. I got to the point in my past where I didn't trust my judgment, and I'm still trying to get that fully back, because I was always told I was doing stuff wrong, and I would just go with that, take the blame. So I've really had to readjust about when I can feel comfortable and when I need to be expressing what's going on with me, and take that as it is kind of a leap, but like a normal thing for people. It's a leap for me, but for people, it's kind of like, oh no, you just tell that person. For me, I'm like looking at him like, oh no, there's that huge gap. You don't understand.
Yeah, there was a lot of the trying to figure out what could you tell me at what time, and then we had to figure out, well, what can we do about it? Because
Yeah.
you do a very strong face thing. I mean, I think that comes a lot from just, like you're saying, protecting people.
Mm-hmm.
So you would put on a front and like, okay, I'm strong, I can handle this. And I'm like, how on earth is she handling this? Because this, if I moved, and when I've moved to small towns from big cities, and that was a terrible adjustment for me. It took me months to understand what the appeal was of these things. And the fact that you seemed okay for a while. And then eventually it was a little bit rough, but the thing was you were dealing with a ton of stress, and that's difficult. It's really, really freaking difficult. And you had to, let's talk about the job hunt a little bit. So like you had a very steady job in California at Twit. Before that, you were a property, not manager, technically. What was it?
When I left that job, I was a leasing agent, but at one point I'd been assistant property manager, and that was for residential luxury apartments. So I went from 2 successful careers that had a lot of stability. I was making the most money I ever had at Twit. And then I went from that to living in New York, and we moved there in June, and it was such a huge blow to kind of an already, kind of fragile ego I have, which I don't really let people know, because I put on a face, just like, oh, I'm going to be strong. I'm going to be strong for, other people, because I have the protective need, even though underneath this hard shell, it's just like it's like a hard-boiled egg kind of, or a poached egg, where it's like I was
thinking lobster, but okay.
Lobster? Okay, that'll work.
You're kind of tough and rough.
Yeah.
Sorry, you're saying something serious.
But yeah, just I have this hard shell where it's like I'm better at solving other people's problems than my own. Definitely better at focusing on other people, and that will distract me from my own immense amount of issues. Oh Oh my gosh, you totally got me distracted by the whole
By the
lobster.
lobster. But so the thing I was talking about with you is, okay, so you had in California, you had connections too. And the other thing is like the way you got your job is because basically you were recruited by a friend.
Yeah.
So you had a ton, like you said, support in California. There was a lot of infrastructure there. So you come out to New York and it's a job hunt. And, you know, we try to get some, like I try to pull whatever strings I've gotten. It had limited strings because I've also lived in California for the past, 3 years. Now I've been out here.
Mm-hmm.
And you were doing a job hunt and applying for many, many jobs. Do you remember how you handled all of that and what made it better?
Well, at first it was I was very optimistic, just putting out all those applications, and it's like, oh no, I've got this connection, I'm going to try this. Oh, this seems promising, because I had promising interviews with CBS and also Rolodex. So I had these promising leads, and the problem is being optimistic, but then kind of driving it so high that when I got to kind of that top of the ladder, and then it just quit, because all of a sudden it's like, oh, they picked somebody else. Then I would just like, instead of kind of just walking down the ladder, I just be like, well, that sucked, and just instead just like jump off of it and hurt myself.
I think it was Rolex, not Rolodex. Rolex, the watchmaker, right?
Yeah, duh.
Well, it doesn't matter. They didn't hire you, so to hell with them. But yeah, it wasn't Rolodex.
No, now I deal with people that won't have Rolodexes, which is very confusing.
Well, yeah, you did. It seemed like you built yourself up a lot, and if something didn't go right, you kind of crashed with that.
Yeah, I would jump off the 10-foot ladder instead of just climbing back down. I would just set myself up, and it's like, oh well, now you need to go from ground zero. It's like instead, like no, just go down a couple steps more. You've got the resume, you've got contacts, you've got things out there. Instead, I would keep this mentality of like, oh no, I'm all the way back to ground zero. I'm, need to jump off the ladder and hurt myself, kind of like just break myself down and start from scratch, which I really didn't need to do.
You were really rough on yourself about that. And then there came a point where I was like, listen, let's start doing some math. Remember we started doing the math argument?
Oh, that was helpful.
Yeah, so like if you ever are on LinkedIn, this makes it's a lot easier to understand. Like when you apply for a job, you see like 85 people have applied. Now in Manhattan, okay?
Yeah.
Where we're living in the area. The other thing was you were looking at jobs that were nearby us too. So you're not only were you looking for like a pathway that you are familiar with or would be happy with,
and a career. Not just like a seasonal or temporary job. I was, it was like I saved up money to a certain extent. I was on unemployment, so it's like I had it so that I strategically made it so that I could actually come out here and look for a career, a good job, not just do something where, I just had to take this because it was the only thing out there and then be miserable at that job. I actually had it set up where I could actually look for an actual career and something that I really did like and be happy at what I was doing.
And so the math
helped.
So we started talking about, okay, like if 1% of people want this job of Manhattan, that would be, X amount. And if they were actually from New Jersey, or they're willing to come to Connecticut, because there's commuter
city, they come from everywhere.
There's all this commuter culture out here too. So the idea is not only you're competing with everybody on the island, you're competing against all these other people, and you're dealing with, tons and tons of people for jobs that are hard to. First, they're rare, and then you are asking for a certain amount of money. You want a job and a career path. So now we started narrowing it down, and the math we came up with something more like there's probably like 100 to 500 people every single time going for the same job you were. So if you didn't get it, it wasn't that like you were down, there was only 3 people and they didn't pick you. It wasn't about not being good enough. It's like this is a massive class of people that you're constantly facing. And I think once we talked about that you had this idea of like, oh, what was that like? Because it seemed like something clicked. What was that?
It was really just a sense of, what was the best way to describe that? It's just kind of like it was just kind of like a reality check where it's kind of like, oh, I'm not doing as bad as I thought. Because my first reaction to everything is it's my fault. That was kind of unfortunately branded into me after so many years of abuse. So it's just that norm. It's that like kind of riding a bike. I'm used to riding a bike a certain way. So it was just used to, it's like, oh, something didn't go right. So it's got to be my fault. So I'm, instantly go to the path I know. I did something wrong. But then when you talked to me and told me about like, no, you're actually, here are the odds that you're going against, and you're getting to be like the top 3 people. That's actually really good.
Yeah, because you were interviewing a lot. That was the
Yeah.
thing. It wasn't like you were just, oh, thank you for your interest letters, or even like no responses. You were on interviews
Yeah.
a good number of times because you were like, we need to get some new clothes. I remember that a lot of discussion of that. We had to go to Marshalls or wherever. So I remember those.
Yeah.
But so yeah, you were reaching very high levels, and you were so hard on yourself about these things. And yeah, so
Gaining perspective really helps, and that's why I also like going to just part of my PTSD is just me being having codependency issues. I'm very codependent, so that's why I also like to go to which helps me keep myself grounded and get myself kind of back on track. I also do CODA, which is Codependence Anonymous. Yeah.
But you run that actually right now.
Yeah, I chair that now. And that's something that really does help me because it helps me always gain perspective. I think perspective is really huge when you're trying to just level yourself out. If you're stressed, it's just gaining that perspective always helps. So just going to that meeting weekly, that's a huge thing that helps me. Because when I go there, it's like I hear people that, may not have had it as hard as I have, or vice versa. And it's that whole perspective of it's like, wow, I don't have it that bad. Or like, wow, like this person I can help. It's like just regrounds me, it regroups. That's something that I'm very grateful for. And I think that perspective is huge on gaining a peace of mind for me. That's huge.
Yeah, it's been like a theme on this show. It's like anytime we talk to anybody and they seem to have their stuff together, they seem to be like, no, I try to keep perspective because, things can really suck when you're in it, right?
Yeah.
And if you keep kicking yourself about it and you just keep thinking, okay, remember that thing I did that I screwed up? I'm going to keep thinking about it over and over and over again. Not only is that moment already past you, it's already done, but you're wasting your time worrying about it. And then you feel worse. And now you feel bad that you feel worse. And then you're stuck in this horrible feeling where you're like, wait a second. We're in Manhattan. We can do something. We're in Queens right now. We can do something. We can do whatever we want. We're healthy. We're relatively young. We can do stuff.
We are young. We're not relatively young.
Well,
okay.
Yeah, you're okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, but yeah, that's the idea of like, once you go and step back and go, wait a second, things can be good. They actually are not usually as bad, especially I think with you going to those groups, like you're saying, seeing other people's experiences. And that's kind of what this show is. It's like you see what we dealt with and what we did to figure things out. Hopefully you're getting something out of this. You're hearing all this and you're like, I didn't get a job and I feel worse. And I kept telling you I was unemployed for 8 months and your unemployment level, I think, went for 5, which was amazing considering what you were trying to do. I'm like, this is fine. Like, you're doing great. And but yeah, so like hopefully people are getting something out of this. Like, don't freak out. And if something goes bad, what would you tell people if they were stuck in the same situation with you? Not with you, because if they were with you, then they're me. If they are in the same situation,
you can give that perspective maybe a little bit later. That was.
Well, anyway, if they were in the same position as you, like, other than perspective, what else got you through this? I mean, it seems like talking, seems like seeing other people's experiences, between moving, the job, just the whole culture shock thing. Like, how does somebody adjust to all of this stuff at once? That's the crazy thing. It's not just one thing. This was all of it. Like, at least when I moved to California, I had a job waiting for me.
Well, yeah, because we moved in June. So I moved to a completely strange place with no job for the first time because I'd always had a job. I'd always been volunteering, but I'd always had a job. And then in December, I also had the bomb of my grandpa passing away on Christmas Eve. So yeah, I had like the 3 huge things that affect people all at once. At a really, and that was just right after I started the new job and I was training for it. So I think the best thing that helped me get through it and that I recommend to anyone is if you have feelings inside, you can't keep them bottled up. You really have to make sure that you can find somebody to talk to, even if it's going to something like a CODA meeting where it's people you don't know, or if it's just Skyping with your friend, you know, who's in New Zealand, which my best friend is. So you have to figure out that 13-hour time difference. But it's something about actually seeing somebody's face. You know, calling does help, but I really do think it's something about seeing somebody's face and talking to them and seeing their expression and them actually reacting to you and having sympathy or understanding. And that's the thing that I really think is key for when you're going through these changes. You really need to make sure that you are not holding it up all inside, that you actually are releasing it. You're releasing it in a healthy way, not all of a sudden just like, I've gotten to the point where I become antsy, like I need to tell somebody. It's like, no, just like when you start getting anxiety, you know, it's not healthy to keep that in. You have to release it. So when you start feeling anxious, that's when I think it's good to talk to somebody. Start talking to a friend or start going to a meeting, or, you know, even just like find some site like meetup.com and, you know, find people that have similar interests and talk to them. Just be able to talk to a human being, that connection, that is the thing that will just level. It will keep you a little bit more mellow. It will release some stress. Just even talking about normal stuff, it's like, okay, I'm not, you know, in my own little world anymore where everything's getting twisted and getting to, you know, making everything worse and worse. You're actually out in the world, not letting your brain kind of fester and turn everything to be more evil and more out of control than it is.
Yeah, it's I think the other thing is, you know, you've told me this a million times. You're a visual person.
Oh, yeah.
So basically, knowing yourself well enough to go, okay, wait a minute, I need to see their faces. I just can't do a phone call. That's not enough for me.
Yeah.
To know yourself well enough to go, what do I need? I don't care how silly it is. Like I do need to be surrounded by people. I need to talk to these people, or I need to see them. And they might think it's silly, and then like, I don't know how to use Skype, Liz. I don't know. Like, listen, I will walk you through it because I really need to see you.
Yeah.
Like to know yourself well enough to go, this plays to my strengths. I'm going to feel better by doing this. And because for me, I'm very like inside. So if something's going on, I don't want to be in a group. I'm like, leave me alone. I want to figure it out. I want to figure it out. I can figure out my problems myself, right?
How does it work out for you?
Does not work out very well.
Okay.
So then I have to go find people to talk to, but I also have to figure out how to say stuff properly to them, because otherwise I can just let that festering stuff out of my mouth and it sounds horrible. Or I can go, here's what's actually bugging me. Like, here's what's going on. And that's, I mean, I'm in therapy. People know that. And so like,
Me too, yeah.
a lot of talking to lots of people to figure out, it's almost like you said, a reality check. Like, am I nuts or blah? And like, oh, you're nuts.
Yeah.
Not pointing at you, but that's what they say to me. Like, oh, like my the best therapist I had basically called me out on everything I was doing wrong. It's like, well, John Arden. He was like, yeah, you're doing that wrong. Yeah, you can't think that. And I was like, what? Because a lot of people like embrace your feelings and, you know, you're right to have them. This guy was like, you can't do that. I was like, well, I think he's right, because obviously this is not working. I'm here talking to you, right, Arden?
Yeah.
Dr. Arden, he was an awesome guy. But yeah, that's sometimes checking, you know, is really, really helpful. And I think, geez, you've had that. That was some 6 months, huh? That was a hell of a time.
Yeah, it was definitely intense, and then just a huge hurdle for me. Always trying to find like my own quest for peace is just the huge hurdle is just me dealing with PTSD, because the best way to explain that is what led me to having PTSD was just me being in relationships. And the best way for me to describe it is I was kind of like in the eye of a twister, where everything is getting destroyed around me. You know, all my stuff is getting destroyed, but I'm in the eye of it where it's quiet. And I don't realize, and I don't see all the destruction. I'm kind of just looking just straight at the ground. And I'm not seeing what the twister is doing and all the destruction it's doing to everything. Till all of a sudden I'm just kind of, it tosses me out. And I'm not even the one who stepped out or tried to get out of it. So because I experienced a couple twisters that led to me having PTSD. And that is just a huge hurdle to kind of conquer every day, I think. And gaining perspective is a big help to it. And just with having PTSD, on a daily basis, it's me trying to not take the path that I'm used to, that I've known. It's taking the path unknown, because the path that I do know that's easiest for me, it's like the train. It's like this, you know, this track is the one that I know, even though it's crickety and it's like going to end into a tunnel and I'm going to get jambled around. That one I know. So I'm going to go on that track versus this new track that's brand new, unknown, but you know, it's like nice stops. It's kind of like the 2 and 3 trains and I'm going on the 7 here. It's like, why am I doing that? I don't need to go on the 7. I know that it's not known for good service and the cars aren't going to be good, but I take it because I know it. Versus like the 2 or 3 where it's like, they're nice and smooth and, you know, they're nice cars. But no, it's like, I'm going to do that because I know that. It's that daily struggle of taking that deep breath, take the path that's unknown, even though it's like unfamiliar and I'm anxiety. It's like, no. Take a breath. Like just breathe. Take the thing that's unknown, but you do know is actually better for you, which is hard for me.
Well, there's also the idea of like, okay, just because you haven't done it doesn't mean that unknown way is bad.
No.
It's because, hey, wait a second. I had like, you know, you've even said the same thing to me, like, well, how's that going for you? Right? Like,
Yeah.
you know, I'm like, well, this is the way I do stuff. Well, how are you doing? You seem really angry. It's like, they're right.
Yeah.
So anyway, we need to wrap up actually.
Okay.
So good, do you think?
Yeah, it's just, you know.
Intense there, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, so
My therapist will be so proud.
So anyway, if people wanted to find you online or whatever, I'm hoping not in your office because I don't think you should give that out.
Oh no, but it is.
You got guards though, so you'd be fine. Anyway,
I have all my guards. They are my minions.
It's a very unusual.
Try to find me near Madison Square Garden.
Don't do that, please, because I don't want them to actually try to find you. I'll show like I have to come to your work every day then. Anyway, if you. It's odd. I always thought promotion's really odd on this show, but if there's anything either you want to promote or just advise to people, whatever you want to say, go for it.
Well, just I think if it's anything to do with myself, I'm mostly available on Google Plus, and I'm trying to be creative, so you can find me at plus Liz Romero. But I think the main thing is with me on my quest for peace, the main things that I would give people from someone who's kind of gone down the path that I have, the things that really have helped me that I would urge people to try to remember and try to use is just trying to always remember to gain perspective on things and make sure if you're a visual person that you do talk to somebody and that you do get that take that extra step to make sure you actually can see somebody, but you actually talk to them when you start to feel anxious, not when you're bubbling over. Don't do the bubbling over tea kettle. As soon as you hear that little whistle, that's when you should actually start to be off the stove, actually release stuff. So just be comfortable with your limits and accept them. They're not weaknesses. They're weaknesses if you don't actually acknowledge them. It's just who you are.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Goodbye. I can't top that. Anyway, I'm gonna try
Thank
to.
you.
I can't top that. Okay, so anyway, yeah, we're all trying to figure out our quest for peace. And if you're wondering, hey, I want to watch older episodes of the show, you can. It's at gfqnetwork.com. We've got our archives there. We'll have new episodes following this one. So if you subscribe, you can do that, and they'll come in when you want it. Well, actually, when they'll come in when they're ready. They're not going to come in when you want them because that's not the way it works. But I'm going to try to do a lot more of these. So thanks everybody for listening and or watching, and we'll see you guys next time. Good luck on your quest for peace too. I'm Iyaz Akhtar.